It was a winter night in a remote suburban area. The sky was dry, but there was a faint, metallic scent in the air. A canine dog suddenly darted into a dark alley, growling and barking furiously at a stained wall where faded traces of long-dried blood had spread like shadows. The police were about to pull him back until the dog dug up a small metal object, a keychain engraved with a name, identical to the one found in a missing person case from 7 years ago, a case that was believed to be closed. But no one there understood the true meaning of that piece of evidence. No one, except Lisa Brooks. Just 5 days ago, Lisa was still a detective with the Inner City Special Unit. Then came a sudden transfer, one she believed was no accident, that brought her back to Still Creek, a town she had spent 7 years trying to forget, but never could. A black SUV came to a stop in front of the local police station. No one greeted her. There was no need. Lisa stepped out wearing a gray trench coat, her curly hair neatly tied back. Her eyes were quiet deep, carrying layers of memories that refused to fade. Inside, the air was oppressively still. The old coffee machine let out a weak hiss. Across the room, a photo of the former K9 unit hung on the wall, one corner torn. Lisa froze. Her younger sister, Emily, had once sat in this very room, waiting, hoping, then vanished. On her first day on duty, Lisa was assigned to handle a petty theft case in the southern residential area. She had barely adjusted to the town's sluggish rhythm when another surprise came her way. The K9 unit had been temporarily reassigned, and she would be watching over one of the working dogs for a few days. His name was Shadow. When the officer brought Shadow out, Lisa felt as if she were looking at a piece of her past, but on 4 legs. Shadow was a Belgian Malinois. Tall, powerful ears upright and eyes so dark and deep they seemed to read human thoughts. He did not bark. He did not wag his tail without reason. He simply stared at Lisa, then walked up to her without needing to be called. Smart one, the handler chuckled. But strange too. He reacts weirdly to old cases, especially when it comes to the scent of blood that has been around for a long time. It's like he remembers the smell of the past. Lisa said nothing, but her hand instinctively reached for the heart-shaped keychain hanging from her rearview mirror, the last thing left of Emily. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet echo stirred. If Shadow really can smell the past, then maybe together we can drag it into the light. That night during a routine patrol, as the car passed a narrow alley, Shadow suddenly growled. Lisa turned, and her heart sank. It was that alley. The wall on the left was cracked and moldy, still stained with peeling black paint. Right here, 7 years ago, fresh tire marks had been found, along with a faint trace of blood from an unknown source. Lisa had been there. She had begged to widen the investigation. But then, the case was quickly closed with a final statement. No signs of foul play. Shadow did not wait for a command. He yanked the leash, charging into the alley as if being pulled by something invisible. Lisa ran after him. She called out, but Shadow just growled, then started to dig. And then the keychain emerged. The metal surface was scratched and dulled, but the engraved words were still clear enough to read Emily, December 3rd. Lisa stood frozen, not because she was surprised, but because she knew this moment would come. She had been waiting for it for 7 years. The next morning, she went to see someone she should have left behind a long time ago, retired Officer Clark. Clark lived alone in a small wooden house, hidden between the trees. A place with no cameras, no strong signal. A place so quiet it felt suspicious. He opened the door with bloodshot eyes, a strong stench of alcohol, and a raspy voice. "Brooks, I knew you would come." The keychain was found, right in the same spot. "Why did you not search more thoroughly back then?" Lisa growled through clenched teeth. Clark went silent. He did not deny it. He did not make excuses. He just poured another drink. You do not understand. Back then, there were things we were not allowed to uncover. Someone from very high up told me to drop the investigation. Emily's case was the last line I dared to cross. Lisa looked at him, eyes filled with a blend of contempt and sorrow. Do you know how many other girls disappeared? No one reported it. No one looked for them. Because they were black. Because they had no money. Because they were not important. Her voice cracked with restrained fury. Clark said just one thing, so softly it nearly disappeared with the wind, I know. Lisa returned to the station and pulled up the cold case files. She filtered by the year of disappearance. Every missing black woman from 2015 to 2021. The results appeared 7 names, ages ranging from 17 to 26. All working class, no family. All vanished near the same area, which now had become a row of abandoned buildings and a junkyard. She printed every photo, pinned them to a whiteboard, then connected locations with red thread. The more she connected, the paler her face became. Each case was spaced about 9 months apart. Each victim had disappeared on moonless nights, and all of them had been last seen near that same alley. Lisa glanced over at Shadow. He lay silently in the corner, but the moment she opened the zip bag containing the keychain, he began to growl. Not out of anger, but because he recognized the scent of familiar blood. We are not tracking a thief, Lisa whispered. We are tracking a beast, wearing human skin. On the wall across the room, a photo of Emily blurred under the yellow ceiling light. 7 years. One massive lie. But this time, Lisa was not alone. This time, she had Shadow. And this time, blood would truly come to light. That night after the keychain had been unearthed, Shadow did not take his eyes off it for even a second. While the other officers scrambled with paperwork and official reports, he sat motionless, like a statue, eyes locked on that small piece of evidence on the table, as if guarding something more valuable than anything that had ever entered that room. Lisa stood by the doorframe watching. The flickering fluorescent light glinted off the scratched metal of the keychain, casting a cold, faint halo over Shadow's jet-black fur. She could not explain why she was so moved, but something in Shadow's gaze made her believe this creature knew more than anyone else in the room. The next morning, Lisa arrived earlier than anyone else. She told no one, just quietly entered the records archive. The small room was thick with dust filled with the musty smell of old paper. She put on gloves and began to comb through every unresolved missing person case from the past 7 years. In that pile of files, something caught her attention. A list. 7 people. Name, age, occupation, location of disappearance. All matched what she had deduced. But then, Lisa froze. She clearly remembered there had been an 8th name on that list. A girl named Clarissa Vaughn, who vanished in 2016. She had read that report when she first joined the force, and now that name was gone from the records. No trace, no footnote, no case closed or dismissed. It was as if someone had quietly deleted her from the system, as though she had never existed. Lisa frowned. She took a screenshot, saved it to her personal drive, and left the room. That afternoon, she decided to take Shadow back to the scene. But this time, not to the alley. Instead, to the hallway behind the station where portraits hung honoring past officers, K-9s, and major solved cases. "Come on," she said softly. Without needing a leash, Shadow rose and walked beside her, as if already knowing where they were going. As they stepped into the corridor, the air turned heavy with stillness. The old photos were yellowed glass frames coated in dust. Lisa walked slowly, reading every name, until she stopped. In the far right corner, a group photo of the K-9 unit from 8 years ago. Her eyes scanned the faces and landed on the second row, far left. A young black woman in uniform, hair tied up high, smiling brightly. Emily, her sister. No one had ever mentioned that Emily had been a K-9 trainee. Not a word in the files. No commendation. No official letter of condolence after she disappeared. As if she had never been part of the team, except for this one photo. Lisa turned to Shadow. That was when she noticed. He was not looking at the picture like she was. He was staring straight at the wall behind it, where a tiny crack in the bricks gave off a strange scent. Without needing instruction, Shadow stepped closer, sniffed, then gently scratched the wall. Lisa crouched down and found that one of the bricks did not match the rest. Someone had patched this wall, not to repair, but to hide. She pulled out her UV flashlight and shone it on the area. A faint glow revealed a handprint, small like that of a woman, and beside it, 3 scribbled letters in ink, CV8. Lisa gasped. CV8, Clarissa Vaughn, victim number 8. On the way back, Lisa opened the file folder she had printed earlier. 7 case files in a row. She pinned them to the board. Beside each photo, she placed a small item, a ribbon, a pencil, a pendant. Shadow stepped forward. Lisa laid them all on the table. She wanted to test what the trainer had said, that Shadow reacted to old scents, especially blood buried beneath layers of time. She held each item near Shadow. He sniffed, no reaction, until Lisa opened the bag containing the old keychain, the one found in the alley. Shadow flinched. His whole body went tense, fur standing on end. He growled, but this time, not in anger, in recognition. He walked around the table, then stopped in front of the photo of Clarissa Vaughn, the one Lisa had just retrieved from the old database. He barked 3 short times, then looked directly at Lisa. Between a human and an animal, there are moments that need no translation. Lisa understood. Shadow had picked up Clarissa's scent from Emily's keychain, and that meant they had not gone missing separately. They had been taken at the same time. That night, the air in the station was thick, like something unspoken lingered there. Lisa stood in front of the board, red threads now linking 8 photos. Clarissa Vaughn's name had returned, not through data, but through a dog. Shadow lay beside Lisa's feet, head resting between his front legs, eyes open, watching as if analyzing. Though he could not speak, he always had a way of being understood, through his gaze, his movements, and his unnervingly precise instincts. Lisa bent down, placed a hand on his head. "Good job, old friend," she whispered. And then, as if he had been waiting for that signal, Shadow suddenly got up. He did not bark, did not growl. He simply walked out of the room. Lisa stood and followed on instinct. She did not need to ask where he was going. She just knew he was leading the way. It was fully dark now. Streetlights flickered through a thin layer of mist. Shadow crossed the parking lot, then veered into a narrow path behind the station, the same place where the keychain had been found. But this time, he did not stop at the wall. He turned left into a narrow alley between 2 old warehouse buildings. This place used to be the scrap recycling yard of the Still Creek steel plant, abandoned for more than 10 years. Broken bricks, rusted metal sheets, oil-stained ground. No one came here anymore. Rumors said there were sewer rats, used needles, and even decomposing animal corpses. But Shadow moved forward without hesitation, until he stopped in front of a cracked cement patch, sunken slightly, like someone had once dug it up, then hastily poured concrete over it. Lisa knelt down and shone her flashlight. She pulled out a vial of long-term blood reagent, something she had brought only because of a hunch. She touched the cement surface with a cotton swab and dropped in a few testing drops. It took just 3 seconds. A dark, reddish purple appeared, cold and unmistakable. Lisa swallowed hard. The scent in the air was not just concrete, it was blood mixed with rust, exactly what Shadow had smelled from afar. She grabbed her multi-tool and began to chip away at the cracked cement. But after only a few minutes, she stopped. Not from exhaustion, but because Shadow gently tugged her sleeve. He did not want her to keep going. He walked on, turned, looked back, then walked again. Lisa stood, wiped her hands, and followed. Shadow led her around the warehouse to the back of a wall with a rotting wooden door. He nudged it open. The door gave way, revealing a staircase descending into a basement. The space below was pitch black, damp, and filled with a smell like formalin, the kind that reminded Lisa of cold storage or a morgue. She turned on her flashlight, drew her pistol. Shadow went ahead slowly, every step measured. The basement was a sealed room, concrete walls, no windows, hooks on the walls, strange marks on the floor circles, rope imprints, faded drag lines leading toward a drain. She aimed the light into one corner, a metal chair with leather straps, dried, caked blood, long, dark brown hair wrapped around the remaining piece of the strap. Shadow barked, loudly. For the first time since entering, she took samples, photographed everything, then turned to leave. But Shadow growled again, this time at a blank section of wall. Lisa looked closely. There was a rectangular dent, as if a photo or a nameplate had once been there, then removed. She gently placed her hand on it, and for a moment it felt like the entire room was holding its breath. Someone was here. Someone was kept here, she whispered. Shadow barked again, short, clear, as if to confirm it. They returned to the station in silence. But the moment Lisa walked through the door, she opened her computer and searched for records on the Still Creek steel plant. A caption appeared, sold in 2017. Buyer, Dr. William H. Vaughn, retired biomedical researcher. Lisa froze. His last name matched victim number 8, Clarissa Vaughn. Father and daughter. She looked at Shadow. He looked back, as if to say, yes. We have entered the darkness now. 3 o'clock in the morning. Lisa jolted awake when the front gate to the station gave off a soft metallic creak. She sat up, looking around. The blanket on the chair was untouched. Her half-finished cup of coffee still sat on the table. But Shadow was no longer lying by her feet like every other night. Shadow, she called quietly, stepping quickly into the hallway. No reply. No footsteps. Only the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. Her instincts kicked in at once. This was not random. Shadow never wandered off on his own, especially not after just detecting fresh blood in the old factory grounds. She rushed outside. The station yard was deserted, but near the edge of the fence she saw a faint paw print in the mud, leading toward the side gate, and beside it a fresh tire mark, small, pressed into the grass. Someone had been waiting and taken Shadow away. She went back to check the security cameras, but every recording between 2:00 and 3:00 a.m. had lost signal. Too clean, Lisa muttered, her palms clenching tight. This was no amateur. It was not someone who just happened to cross paths with Shadow. This was an act carried out with precision. But why? Why take a dog? And then she understood. Shadow was not just a K9. He was living evidence. He had smelled Clarissa's blood. He had dug up Emily's keychain. And more importantly, he could lead Lisa to the real burial sites. He was the one thing the killer was afraid of. She opened her laptop and traced the GPS signal from Shadow's collar tag. But there was no signal. Either it had been removed or jammed. She switched strategies, reviewing all the places where Shadow had shown strong reactions in recent days. The alley, the cracked wall, the factory, the basement, the old photograph, and the code CV8. All of them formed a spiral-shaped pattern. with the center being the old medical chemical transit depot behind the factory. That area had been abandoned after an acid leak 6 years ago. No one dared go near it. No one checked it. And on satellite maps, it showed up as a dark, obscured patch. She got in her car. No orders needed. Dawn had not broken. The air felt thick, almost toxic. Lisa turned off the headlights and walked into the old warehouse zone. Every step on the broken tiles echoed with a dry crack. She reached for her gun, slowly drew it, and flipped the safety off. And then, a faint sound came from inside the warehouse. Not human. Not a rat, but a soft screech, like claws scraping against metal. She pressed her back against the wall, took a deep breath, then lunged in. Her flashlight swept the room. No one. But in the middle was a steel cage, inside dense darkness, and a pair of eyes staring at her. Shadow, she rushed forward. The dog growled faintly, but not out of threat, out of exhaustion. His body was scratched, bruising around his mouth, one front claw broken. But the moment he saw her, he surged forward, slamming into the bars as if trying to break free. Lisa gritted her teeth and used a crowbar to break the lock. Her hands trembled. Her eyes welled up. "Easy." "I'm here now," she whispered, gently pulling the door open. But instead of bolting out like most dogs would, Shadow stayed still. He looked at her, breathed heavily, then turned and ran toward the back of the warehouse, where a door was chained shut with thick iron links. He stopped there, did not bark, just looked. Lisa approached, cut the chains. The door creaked open, and a wave of formalin and something like burnt rubber rushed into her nose. She aimed the light inside. It was a hidden underground room. 4 mold-covered walls. In the center, 7 metal boxes numbered from 1 to 7. Lisa could barely breathe. She stepped forward, opened the first box. Inside was a folded pink hoodie stained with old blood. The clothing tag still read, "Property of Clarissa Vaughn." The second was Emily's necklace. A single curly strand of hair clung to it, identical to her sister's. Lisa dropped to her knees. She did not cry. Shadow sat beside her, resting his head on her leg, as if offering comfort. But his eyes stayed locked on box number 8, still unopened. Someone else was still missing. Lisa stood, her gaze fixed on that 8th box. Her hands trembled, not out of fear, but because her instincts screamed whatever was inside was not like the others. Shadow stepped forward, sniffed around the edges, his fur-bristled eyes scanning every corner as if sensing movement no one else could see. Lisa slowly lifted the lid. No clothing, no personal belongings. Only a USB drive inside a shockproof case, a blood-stained tissue, and a human fingernail fragment sealed in a zip bag. No name, no number. Lisa glanced at Shadow. He did not bark, but she could see the alertness in every fiber of his body. She tucked the USB into her bag, pulled out her phone to take a photo of the scene. The flash had just gone off when a faint sound came from the other side of the room. Not loud, but enough to tighten every nerve in Lisa's body. She spun around, flashlight sweeping the corners. Shadow growled softly, then began to shake, eyes fixed on the ceiling at the end of a narrow corridor, where an old air vent had a broken grate. Someone was watching them from there. The air grew thick. No one spoke. Lisa held her breath, drew her gun. Flashlight pointed directly, but the shadow was gone. She dashed into the hallway, Shadow at her heels. They ran up the steps leading to the back of the warehouse. No one. Just a half-smoked cigarette left on a rusted railing, still warm. She stepped closer. Next to it, a gray keycard. No logo, no serial number. But when she held it under her flashlight at an angle, a faint laser-etched inscription appeared, WHV. Lisa felt her spine go cold. WHV, William H. Vaughn. the man who had purchased the factory grounds, and father of Clarissa Vaughn, the 8th victim erased from the records. Shadow sniffed along the railing, growling in short bursts, then suddenly stopped. He turned, ran to a pile of discarded wooden pallets, and scratched at a spot near the base of the wall. Lisa stepped closer and gasped. A tiny infrared camera deeply embedded in the wall, disguised with dust and chipped paint. No light, no signal. A specialized device used only by old intelligence units, or someone with military training. Whoever this was had not just been watching them now. They had been watching from the very beginning, possibly witnessing every part of Lisa's investigation. From the moment Shadow dug up the keychain to the discovery of the hidden room beneath the factory. And that person was playing a game where they alone made the rules. Lisa returned to her car without saying a word. She plugged the USB into her encrypted laptop, eyes glued to the screen. A series of videos appeared. The footage was shaky low quality, but clear enough. Young women, blindfolded, hands tied, seated in metal chairs. The camera angle was high, as if from a corner of the room. No audio, just fragmented clips. One scene, a woman resisting, another being injected with something. And finally, black screen. Lisa's hands trembled as she paused the video. Under each clip was a label: CV1, CV2, CV7. She knew what it meant. These were the missing victims. At the end of the list was a file labeled CV8 Draft, but it could not be opened, encrypted. Lisa leaned back. She was not afraid, but she knew this was no longer a suspect she was chasing. This was someone orchestrating the entire board. At that moment, Shadow stood up and walked toward the window. He let out a low growl. Lisa looked over. Outside, a black truck passed by, no license plate. Slowly, as if letting those inside get a good look at the station. The truck vanished into the night, but Lisa knew they had not left. They were just waiting for her next move. And this time, if she stepped wrong, it would not just be her who fell. Shadow might never come back again. 2 o'clock in the morning. The interrogation room no longer bathed in harsh white light. Only a faint yellow glow from the computer illuminated Lisa's face, casting a heavy shadowed tone. Beside her, Shadow lay on his side, breathing steadily but eyes still open, as if he dared not sleep, ready for any shift in the darkness. Lisa stared intently at the decryption interface of the USB. The system was still running, but a message appeared. File encrypted with biometric lock. Fingerprint and heart rate of registered owner required. Not just anyone could design encryption like this. This was no longer the game of a common psychopath. This was technology known only to military bio-research units or national security programs. She reopened the property records for the factory site. The owner was listed as William H. Vaughn, retired biomedical researcher. But when Lisa ran a background check through public databases, every path led to nothing. No photo, no bank accounts, no social security number, no known relatives. There was only one thing for sure: he had once lived in this state. And he was the father of Clarissa Vaughn. Lisa searched for Clarissa. No birth certificate, no school records, no medical files, as if those two names had never existed. At that moment, Shadow suddenly sprang up, letting out a low growl. His ears perked, his entire body poised and alert. Lisa held her breath. The window to the right, something had just flickered past it. She shut off the screen, drew her gun, and motioned for Shadow to stay silent. They moved like shadows through the room that had become so familiar. But this time, the silence made Lisa feel like she was the one being hunted. A metallic clatter echoed from the warehouse behind the station. Lisa signaled. Shadow darted forward, completely silent. She followed closely behind. The warehouse door stood wide open. lights inside flickering. On the floor, a folded piece of paper pinned to a wooden beam with the blade of a knife. On the paper in red ink were the handwritten words, "You want the truth? Come alone." No dog, no weapon. 4:00 a.m. Basement of the old hospital. Lisa clenched the paper in her fist. Her breath burned hot in her chest. The old hospital, the site of the formaldehyde gas leak and fire in 2012, now sealed and abandoned. She looked at Shadow. "They're baiting us." Shadow did not react, but his eyes said, "Everything I am going with you." At exactly 3:57 in the morning, Lisa parked her car about 980 feet away from the hospital. She shut down all systems and disabled the GPS. Wearing a tiny earpiece, she slipped a button-sized camera into her inner pocket. "Stay here, old friend," she whispered to Shadow, tying him in the car. But the moment she stepped away, Shadow began to let out a low whine, a sound he only made when deeply uneasy. Lisa turned back and placed her hand on his head. "If I don't come back in 1 hour, you know what to do," she said, lips pressed tight. She entered the hospital through a side door that had been pried open. No lights, no sound. The basement had only one path, leading down to old storage rooms and underground pipes. Every step echoed through the darkness like a death toll. She felt someone's presence, a breath behind her neck, but could not locate it. At the end of the corridor, a steel door hung slightly open. A flickering light blinked inside. Lisa stepped in. In the center of the room, a table, and on it, a large photo of Emily, her sister from long ago. Her hands bound, mouth taped, her terrified eyes staring directly into the lens. Below the photo, a biometric scanner. The screen displayed "Touch to unlock file CV8. Lisa froze. She understood. The one behind all of this had planned everything, and now he was leading her to the final step, where he controlled the entire game. Suddenly, a faint click echoed behind her. Lisa spun, gun raised. No one. Only a shadow slipping past the doorway, vanishing into the corridor. Lisa chased after it. The hallway was pitch dark, but then a hand grabbed her collar from the side, yanking hard. Her gun dropped. A man's voice, low and hoarse, spoke. "You want to know why no one ever found me, Lisa Brooks? Because I do not belong to this world." He slammed her against the wall. Her wrists locked, his breath hot against her ear, a cold blade pressed against her neck. "You think justice is real, Shadow? Will just be another dog drugged and buried in lime. And you will be victim number 9. CV9. At that exact moment, a deep growl echoed from afar. Shadow. Then came a rush of movement like a gust of wind. As the man turned his head, Lisa twisted her wrist free, shoved hard, and rolled out of the hold. Shadow barreled into him like lightning. Both crashed to the floor. The knife flew from his hand. He screamed, for the first time showing his face. But it was a face from no file. This man was not William Vaughn, not Clarissa's father, not a doctor, not anyone at all. He was a non-existent person. Years of silence seemed to crack open as Shadow hurled the faceless man to the ground. No blinking, no words, just pure instinct. The dog lunged, teeth deep in his arm. Blood sprayed. The man screamed, striking at Shadow blindly. Lisa rolled, grabbed her Glock, aimed. But her finger froze. His face was gray, undefined, like it had never belonged to any public record. No fingerprints, no surgical signs, just blank. "Freeze," she shouted. He stopped breathing hard. Shadow stood between them, growling low. "You think you can catch me," he rasped. "I'm what the system made, then erased." "What's your name?" Lisa asked. "I have none," he said. "I was their blade, their silence, their burial ground." Lisa didn't shoot. Emily. She was one of your secrets, wasn't she? His eyes gave the answer. Sirens approached. "You're coming with me," Lisa said. "No." He pulled out a small syringe filled with blue liquid. "Don't," Lisa warned. "I was made to vanish." He injected it. Seconds later, his body collapsed. Gone. Lisa sat in silence, a nameless corpse at her feet. A face that had never officially existed. When backup arrived, they found Lisa sitting silently in the basement shadow, lying beside her, both of them covered in dust and blood. "Are you all right?" the lead officer asked. Lisa nodded, but there was nothing all right in her eyes, because she knew the man who had just died was not the hand behind the game. He was only the final pawn. "Take the body," she said, "but do not send it to the town coroner. I want it examined at the federal level. I will oversee it myself." "What about the dog?" someone asked. Lisa did not answer. She did not need to. Shadow stood up, walked to her side, and rested his head on her leg, as if to say, "I am still here." Outside, the sun had begun to rise, but inside Lisa, the sky remained clouded. That face, just one of many, never recorded, and the battle was far from over. The next day, Lisa sat in the FBI conference room, facing a screen of sensitive data. It showed the nameless man fully scanned. What silenced the entire team was the final report: no match found in any national identity system. Bone structure, Special Forces combat training, subdermal implants, experimental classification. Lisa leaned back, eyes fixed on a red padlock labeled "Top Secret, Eyes Only." Agent Jason, decrypting the USB, shook his head. This wasn't made by civilians, not even regular criminals. Lisa nodded. These were once in uniform, then quietly let go. Thanks to Shadow being logged as evidence-carrying asset, Lisa got access to internal files. Deep in the archive, Project Clarion. Only one note: non-identity operatives for ultra-classified missions. Shut down after 2012. Data sealed under the Biosecurity Act. That night, Lisa sat in her apartment. Shadow lay beside her, not guarding, just understanding. "My sister didn't die in an accident," Lisa whispered. "She was collateral in a cover-up, and we are the last blood who remembers." Shadow sniffed gently. Lisa opened the keychain box he had found, now filled with evidence-dried blood hair DNA matched to Emily. The wall map still stood. New Red Circle St. John's Medical Facility, former branch where Clarissa had once been treated. Lisa felt a chill. She reopened the records. The doctor listed Dr. WHV, matching the initials etched on the key card. But the hospital was shut down in 2013. All records destroyed. And William H. Vaughn, not a licensed doctor. "It's just a symbol," Lisa muttered. Shadow stared at the door. "WHV is not a name," she said softly. "It's a code, a symbol." The next morning, Lisa returned to the FBI office. She requested access to declassified military data using the keywords WHV plus Clarion. It took nearly an hour before the system returned. A result: a compressed file dated March 12, 2015. The same day Emily went missing. She opened it. Inside was a video, grainy and distorted, but with clear audio. "We cannot risk a breach. Any subject exposed to Gen 2.1 implants must be retrieved or terminated. Indicators include photosensitivity to artificial light, inability to retain fingerprints, and above normal olfactory memory capacity." Lisa paused the video. In one frame, the camera swept past a row of sealed isolation cells, and she saw Emily, her sister, alive, in a containment room, eyes covered, wrists bound. Lisa broke down in tears. For the first time since the case began, Shadow let out a low growl. Lisa wiped her eyes and leaned down to embrace him. "I do not know if she is still alive." But I know. I have never been wrong about where I was going. Every place you stopped was a piece of Emily's memory left behind. She clenched her fist. If she is still out there, I will find her. Shadow looked her in the eye. He did not bark. He did not growl. He just stood and walked forward. After watching the classified video, everything in Lisa's mind became fact. No more guesses, just truth. Emily had been held captive in a hidden facility by a system that had no name but touched every buried case. Lisa left FBI headquarters in silence. No one stopped her. No one needed to. They knew she had uncovered something no one dared to speak of, and only she would see it through. That afternoon, Lisa and Shadow returned to St. John's, the abandoned facility where Clarissa Vaughn was last recorded. The main entrance was chained, but Lisa didn't need it. She led Shadow to the back where the admin wing once connected to the treatment center via an underground hall. Shadow moved silently each step, certain like he already knew the way. The basement door creaked open. The air was thick with mold-old chemicals and a familiar trace dried blood masked with chlorine. Shadow slowed, nose to the ground, then stopped growling before a painted-over brick wall. Lisa shined her flashlight. Faded beneath the peeling paint was a red circle with 3 diagonal slashes, the Clarion symbol. She leaned in. Behind the wall, a low electrical hum and a heartbeat, faint, uneven. A room, still active. Lisa scratched behind Shadow's ear. Keep going. The hallway swallowed them in pitch black, but Shadow never stopped. He led her left through 3 iron doors until they reached a room that had once been an isolation chamber. The door was ajar, the room empty. All that remained was a plastic wristband with the name Emily Brooks, 203. Lisa dropped to her knees. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. Dried blood still clung to the edge. Shadow growled softly, then bolted toward the end of the hall. Lisa followed. When she caught up, she found him standing before a small hospital elevator. The button light was still on. It was functioning, even though this facility had been abandoned for over 10 years. She pressed the button. Nothing happened. Then, ding, the door opened. No one inside, but taped to the wall was a handwritten note. If you are reading this, it means you have come far, but not deep enough. Emily is not dead. But she is not the same girl you once knew. There are doors that should only be opened if you are willing to give up everything. Lisa gripped the paper. A cold sweat ran down her back. She looked at Shadow. He stepped into the elevator first, without looking back. The elevator took them to level -3, a floor not listed on the building's schematics. The doors opened to a white corridor, spotless, free of dust or cobwebs, as if someone still cleaned it every day. The lights flicked on automatically as they entered. Lisa walked slowly, gripping her Glock tight. Shadow moved ahead, cautious, ears erect. She counted 12 doors, 6 on each side, all sealed, all unmarked. At the end of the hallway stood a double-paned glass door glowing faintly blue from within. Lisa approached. The lights clicked on. A touchscreen lit up DNA match. Lisa Brooks. She froze. Beneath it was a fingerprint prompt. She placed her hand. 1 beat 2. Beep. Access granted. The door opened. Inside was not a cell. It was a memory chamber. A room filled with dozens of LCD screens, each playing video clips. Emily laughing, Emily playing piano, Emily sleeping in a hospital bed. In the center stood a metal chair and a thick folder labeled Subject 203, Cognitive Side Effects, Internal Use Only. Lisa opened the first page, Brain Scans, Neural Reflex Charts, and at the bottom, a handwritten note in red ink. Emily B. demonstrates extreme biological scent memory response. First activation recorded in proximity to a Malinois-type K9 subject. Recommendation: terminate, or retain as fallback bioresponse key. Lisa looked at Shadow. He was the one who reactivated Emily's memories. The final screen played a short video. A girl with curly hair lying on a white bed, breathing steadily, eyes closed. In the corner of the screen, last updated 11 days ago. Lisa clenched her fist. She's still alive. Shadow growled softly, as if he too had just realized this search was not over. Lisa stood frozen in front of the screen, showing her sister's face. Emily. The girl lay on her side, her skin pale, but her body moved slightly with each steady breath. No IV lines, no monitors. But it was clear Emily was still alive. Shadow let out a low whine, his tail tapping the floor once, his signature signal when detecting a living human nearby. Lisa wiped her tears and turned toward the control panel. There was only one door, at the far end of the room, labeled Zone 7, Neural Stasis Chamber. Beneath the label was a faded biohazard symbol barely covered by white paint. She placed her hand on the sensor. Nothing. A red message appeared on screen. Access requires central control authorization. Security code W13. Lisa clenched her jaw. W13. Another code. Not a person's name. Not a device number. But an internal override level accessible only to the creator of the system. She turned to look at Shadow. He was still growling faintly, eyes fixed on the opposite wall. A blank surface, but the smell was strong. Chlorine, dried blood, and human presence. Recent. Lisa pressed her ear to the wall. A faint click, the soft sound of a mechanical lock being released. "Get back," she shouted, pulling Shadow down with her, just as a small explosion erupted from within the wall. The wall cracked open. A narrow passage formed, just wide enough for a person to crawl through. And then, someone emerged. A hooded figure in a gray biohazard suit, black mask, and safety goggles. No words, no warning. The figure raised a medical injector gun, the long needle aimed directly at Lisa. She rolled to the side, a sharp thud, the needle stuck in the wall behind her. Shadow launched forward like a missile, slamming into the figure. They tumbled to the ground, struggling. Lisa rolled to the side, grabbed the dropped gun chambered around, but did not shoot. She needed to know who held the key to the chamber. The person staggered back, Shadow still growling. Lisa aimed at their face. "Take off the goggles, or I will shoot you in the forehead." They hesitated, then slowly removed the glasses. Lisa went numb. It was a woman. Gaunt face, high cheekbones, black hair streaked with gray, but the eyes familiar. Clarissa Vaughn, still alive. "You should leave," Clarissa said quietly. Her voice rasped. "You are not supposed to be down here. Where is Emily?" "She is no longer Emily. She is part of a failed experiment. One I tried to stop, but I was not strong enough to save either of you." Lisa stepped forward, gun lowered. What did they do to her? Clarissa swallowed hard. They activated the neural olfactory reflex zone. They tied emotion, memory, and survival instinct to scent, specifically the scent of a loved one's blood. Shadow. Lisa turned toward the dog who stood guard beside her. Clarissa nodded. She, Emily, was the one selected for experimental bonding with a K9. Shadow is the only Malinois unit that was not neutralized after the Clarion program was shut down. Lisa sank into a chair. "In other words, the bond between my sister and Shadow is what broke your entire experiment." Clarissa lifted her gaze, eyes glassy. Yes, emotion. Something no report could ever predict. Lisa stood again. "You still have a chance to save yourself, Clarissa. Open that door. Let me take Emily out." Clarissa hesitated. Then she pulled a keycard from under her collar. W13. But once that door opens, all data related to this program will be deleted. You will have no legal evidence, no case to bring to court. Lisa looked at Shadow. He stepped forward, resting his paw on her foot. She nodded. I do not need proof. I just need my sister back. Clarissa swiped the card. The door opened, white light flooded out, and behind the glass, Emily lay there, still breathing. Lisa stepped forward, Shadow by her side letting out soft, rhythmic sounds, like memory whispering from long ago. When Lisa touched her sister's hand, she felt it, the faint squeeze of Emily's fingers around hers. No words were needed, none were spoken. The door had not just been opened to enter, but to leave, to let a soul return to the light. Behind them, Clarissa stood still. They will come after you, Lisa said, better than living in a cage. The girl who was erased had just unlocked the truth. Shadow followed last, stepping through the door he had been chasing all along. But this time, he did not growl. He did not bark. He simply looked up at Lisa and Emily, and in his eyes was the light of justice finally returned. A week after Emily's rescue, the underground lab at the St. John's facility had been completely sealed. The system data was erased permanently, exactly as Clarissa had warned. No legal evidence, no basis for conviction. Only Lisa and Shadow remained as living witnesses, carrying memories no one wanted to hear. Emily was still in a deep coma, but her condition was stable. Doctors said the greatest miracle was that her brain had not been damaged, and her neural reflexes remained intact. She was transferred to a safe rehabilitation center, registered as a long-term kidnapping victim perpetrator unknown. Lisa was no longer a police officer. She resigned. Not because she gave up, but because she chose to search for light, unbound by the system. That afternoon, she returned to the abandoned cabin of Officer Clark, the place where all the clues had begun. The table still held the photo board of victims, faces that had once been forgotten. Clarissa had survived. Emily was rescued. But what about the other 6? Lisa opened an old leather notebook. Inside was the list signed shakily by Clark Alyssa Dean, 17 years old, vanished on her way home from school. Trina Cole, 22 years old, volunteer medical worker. Monique Harris, 19 years old, waitress at a night diner. Jade Thompson, 25 years old, former witness in a court case. Latoya Jenkins, 26 years old, cleaning staff. Sierra Barnes, 20 years old, biology student. She pinned all 6 photos back on the board. Shadow stepped up, sitting beneath the images, his eyes locked onto the faces, as if recognizing each name. For a moment, Lisa believed that, in his memory of scent and sound, these women had never truly disappeared. She began tracing local records. After digging through accident reports, Lisa noticed a strange pattern. 4 of the 6 victims were listed as presumed dead from car accidents or missing in the woods, but no bodies were ever found. Trina Cole, reported missing after leaving her late-night shift, was marked as possibly hitchhiking, presumed accident, no remains recovered. Latoya Jenkins, quit her job without notice, apartment abandoned, presumed voluntary departure. Sierra Barnes, a student who had registered for internal research at a military medical lab and vanished without a trace shortly after. Lisa gripped the file folder tighter. All of them were cover stories, meant to erase failed test subjects. But the most shocking moment came when she returned to the place that once held Emily. And in a dim room hidden beside the main facility, Shadow led her to a row of oversized cold storage units, locked manually, no electricity. She broke the lock. Inside were 6 large biopreservation tubes, each containing neural tissue samples labeled D1 through D6. Above each tube was an old photo, matching the 6 missing girls. Lisa could not breathe. She knew exactly what she was seeing. Not corpses, but fragments, harvested to analyze biological memory responses. No life remained, but the DNA still did. They had been used for experimentation, not just on their bodies, but on their memories. She reported everything to federal authorities, but by the very next morning, the entire room had been wiped clean. No traces, no tubes, no files, no way to confirm it had ever existed. A national security lockdown order was issued. Lisa was barred from returning. Investigators were reassigned elsewhere. Every trace vanished, like it had never happened. That evening, Lisa walked with Shadow along the lakeshore. The moonlight shimmered across the cold surface of the water. She stopped, opened her notebook. 8 names. Now, only Emily and Clarissa had truly survived. She added one final line beneath each name: not vanished, not forgotten, still here, in the scent of blood, in the eyes of a dog who growled for them. Shadow sat beside her, resting his head on her leg as always. He did not bark. He did not need to, because he knew. Justice was not a sentence written on paper. It was memory returned. She tore out the last page, folded it in thirds, and tucked it inside Shadow's collar. One day, if she were no longer here, at least someone might follow the scent of ink paper and unspoken justice to find the truth again. 7 weeks had passed since the rescue. Emily had not yet woken. Every day, Lisa visited the recovery center, always bringing Shadow. At first, the doctors would not allow a canine unit into the intensive care room, but after the first session, when Shadow sat silently beside the bed and Emily's heart rate suddenly stabilized, they agreed to make an exception. Shadow never barked. He simply sat there watching his handler's sister, eyes bright, steady, and silent. And every time Lisa tried to leave, Shadow would turn his head, as if to say, just a little longer. And then the day arrived, a quiet morning in late autumn. Pale sunlight streamed through the window. Lisa was reading a passage from one of Emily's favorite books. In the dark, remember who held your hand to lead you out. Shadow suddenly stood. He walked over to the bed, tilted his head slightly, let out a small whine, and placed one paw gently on the mattress. Lisa looked up. Emily was opening her eyes. Slowly, blurry, lost, but unmistakably she was waking up. Lisa exhaled the name like a broken prayer. The girl blinked. Her lips moved. No sound. But her hand, weak, trembling, reached and squeezed Lisa's fingers. Then, slowly, her eyes drifted toward the dog watching her without blinking. Shadow did not move. He simply lowered his head and gently touched her hand with his nose, as if to say, "You are home now." And in that moment, Lisa's tears finally fell. In the days that followed, Emily still could not speak. But memories began returning, fragmented, scattered, but filled with emotion. Every time Lisa spoke of the past, of the birthday with the keychain, of the time they skipped school to see a movie, Emily's eyes welled with tears. One day, Lisa handed her a scrap of cloth, stained faintly with old blood, from the keychain Shadow had unearthed. Emily broke down sobbing. She remembered. Not everything, not clearly, but enough to know she had never been forgotten. After 3 weeks of rehabilitation, Emily was able to write. With shaky hands, she wrote the first 3 sentences since waking up. "I remember this dog. He saved me. He does not bark, but he knew where I was." Lisa held the note and could not speak a word. That night she went home, alone, and opened the last letter left by Officer Clark, the man who had first led her into this search for truth. Before dying of a stroke, he had written a letter addressed to no one taped to the back of the old K9 unit photo. the one with Emily in it. If you are reading this, it means you went farther than I ever dared. I once saw Emily in the hospital basement corridor, but I looked away because I was afraid of destroying my career, afraid of shattering the fragile trust I still had in the system I served, and because I was afraid you would end up like me. But now I know you are not like me. You are the only one who never backed down before the silence. Lisa folded the letter, staring out the window. Rain had started to fall, but rain was no longer an ending. This time, the rain was a cleansing. The next morning, Lisa returned to the center. Shadow ran out to greet her as always, but today something was in his mouth. An old photograph of Lisa and Emily. As children, its edges blurred with moisture. Lisa looked at Shadow, surprised. "Where did you find this?" He did not answer, just turned and ran to a corner of the room, where a small wooden box lay, the same one Lisa had brought years ago. She opened it. Inside were the keychain, the handwritten notes, and a blue ribbon Emily once wore in her hair. Shadow had quietly sniffed out everything that once belonged to Emily, as if he were helping piece back the stolen fragments of her memory. Lisa stepped into Emily's room. The girl sat propped up on a pillow, smiling faintly when she saw her sister. One day, Lisa said, "I will tell you everything, every detail, every piece. But today, it is enough to know that you are still you, still here." Emily nodded. Her hand reached for Lisa's. Then she pointed out the window, where Shadow sat watching like a spirit that never sleeps. "What about him?" she wrote. Lisa squeezed her hand. "He is the only one who never gave up." 1 week after Emily woke up, Lisa received a strange package, no sender, no postmark. Inside was an encrypted hard drive and a single note. "If you want to know who pulled the strings, watch at 2 a.m., but only once." Lisa brought the drive to her old FBI station where she once worked. Though she had resigned, she still had temporary access. Inside the now empty investigation room, she plugged the drive in and logged in using her old credentials. Only one file appeared, WHV, the operator. She hit play. The screen showed a grainy video recorded from a hidden angle inside a dark conference room. A man sat in the center, white shirt, black tie, glasses, a pentagon seal on the stamp in his hand. Clarion was never a biological experiment program. It was a recruitment filter in the literal sense. We used socially invisible populations to test bioresponse, aiming to create a generation of living sensors, more accurate than artificial intelligence. To do that, we needed living samples, and so 8 girls were selected. I ordered Clarion shut down in 2016, but another unit took over without reporting back. They continued the trials, believing one subject had successfully formed a neural bond with a K9 unit without machinery. That subject was Emily Brooks, and the K9's name was Shadow. Lisa sat frozen. The man in the video was the Deputy Director of U.S. Biodefense, a former top advisor to the Department of Defense. A man who had never appeared publicly, but within internal documents, he was referred to as WHV. Not a name, but a designation, William H. Vaughn, a scientist once trusted completely by the government, Clarissa's father, and the one silently orchestrating the disturbing experiments that had spanned over 7 years, hiding behind the mask of retirement and facility redevelopment. Clarissa had known the truth, or at least a part of it, but she had chosen silence. Not out of complicity, but because she understood her father was a name you could not speak inside the military system. Lisa bowed her head. The case had never truly been solved. It was redirected, buried, pushed deep into a system where justice could never reach. That night, Lisa returned to the forest where it all began. Shadow walked beside her. He did not bark, but this time there was no sorrow in his eyes, no pain. He knew now who had pulled the strings, and so did Lisa. But they could not touch him through the law. Lisa stopped and looked up at the sky. Not everyone needs to see the truth, but we just have to live with it. She planted the keychain into the ground beside 6 white flowers, each representing one of the girls who had died. No court, no trial, but they will not be forgotten. The next morning, Lisa uploaded the video to a hidden forum, a space used by investigative journalists, former agents, and civil rights groups to share classified leaks. 3 hours later, the video vanished from all platforms, but thousands had already saved it. And for the first time in 7 years, the name Clarion appeared in media headlines, even if only as an unverified theory. Lisa smiled. They cannot kill memory. They cannot silence 1,000 voices. A month later, Lisa received an anonymous phone call. They will not leave you alone. Lisa answered, I have Shadow, and a list no one dares to read. Then she hung up. Shadow lay at her feet, but this time he was not alert, not growling. He lay peacefully like a warrior who had finished his final battle. The news networks gave vague reports. The Department of Defense declined to comment on allegations surrounding Project Clarion. No identities of those mentioned in the leaked video have been confirmed. As the last darkness lifted from Still Creek, the little town was no longer the same, though no one but the 3 remaining souls truly understood how much the 7-year hunt had consumed lives' memories and silences that never had names. Lisa, whose eyes had long dried from loss, was different now. No longer just the investigator left behind by an unresolved case. She was now a living witness to pain, to hope, and to truth finally spoken. Emily, carrying more scars than any girl, should still chose to live with shaky hands and an unwavering gaze. She had returned not as a victim, but as a witness to another's silent courage. And Shadow, the quiet soul of the entire pursuit. Not a tool, not a pet, but a comrade, a guide, a third heart in the story. 3 figures, one lost one who searched, and one who could not speak, but all of them stepped through the fog together, stood before the dark, and whispered to the world, the truth will not reveal itself. But if you keep digging, even if it is with the paw of a dog or the eyes of a sister, eventually every wall of dried blood will crack. Still Creek is quiet again, but beneath the ground, Shadow's paw prints remain. Each step a memory that once on one night, one dog barked when the world stayed silent. And if you listen closely to the wind at night, you will still hear that sound, not a warning, but a call for the truths left unnamed. Dear friend, if you have stayed with us this far, then this was not just a video, not just a story about a case or a mysterious canine. It was a reminder that justice does not always echo from a courtroom. That some barks in the night, which seemed meaningless, may uncover the first clues to buried crimes. And that the ones pushed aside, overlooked, and forgotten are often the bravest voices to bring truth out of the dark. If you have ever ignored someone's eyes because they seemed different, if you believed a dog's bark was just a wild instinct, if you thought every case marked closed was truly the end, then please remember Lisa, Emily, and Shadow. And if one day you hear a dog barking into the empty night, stop. Listen carefully. It might just be the first whisper of justice. Thank you for watching this video. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, or simply write, I am still listening. And do not forget to subscribe for more stories that move Uncover and remind us of our shared humanity. See you in the next video.